Thank you for the introduction, Mirna. I guess I wanted to begin by saying a big thank you for the invitation, giving me the opportunity to speak about my research in film. And I also wanted to say thank you to all of those who are working behind the scenes here at Sonic X Academy. So today my method is to show a few choreographies of my findings, mixing my documentary AAA Cargo in parts. I'd also like to highlight that this documentary was made through various collaborations, with the sound design by Josh Fiola, the script written in collaboration with Ming Lin, and the following film clips features interviews with Runa Reha, Ravi Sundaram, and Charmaine Chua, whom you've just heard her speak about her incredibly poignant research. Over the past year or so, I've been looking into what is currently labeled as the New Silk Road, more specifically, the Overland Infrastructure Project of the Belt and Road Initiative. This research still feels very much at its beginnings, but by feeling my way forward, what had allowed me to find fissures into the seemingly impenetrable project of infrastructure were mainly through personal experiences and chance encounters. So here, I hope to draw a vastly distributed map, interlinking its nodes through dizzying movements so that we may just end up seeing our present in multiple.
慢慢的，在中亚大陆的脊梁地带，会浮现出升级改造和数据涌动的阵势。新的开发银行所布下的投资，将编织出崭新的柏油马路、直通的铁路线、急速的数据传输和实时的跟踪。PPT 报告传递出了双赢策略。 集团勘察好土地资源，伺机攫取积累优势，一次延缓内部危机的华丽地域转移，又一次熄灭了大陆经济放缓的新常态。A 点和 B 点就此毫无阻隔地相遇了。事态发展迅速，地区性的工厂散落。 标准化的运作模式，分工管理，按部就班，每条路的铺就都是一条顺风的便道。就这样，正常的国家渠道悄然走过，瞬间成为过往。
咱们中国的铁路呢，现在呢，以前是4纵4横，现在是8纵8横，铁路网非常密集。完了以后，它有货运线，有客运线啊。完了以后，双向铁路，专门有货运的，它跟客运不冲突，知道吧？还有这个货运呢，专门是直达的、整列的，像到欧洲、到哈萨克斯坦的呀，这样铁路就整列的走。
那现在这是
不停，
什么时候开始的？
这个啊，从前年吧，就开始了整列的，就好比油啊、棉花呀。
习近平提出这个
“一带一路”就开始了啊，就整列的，整个就30个车，10个车一列到哈萨克斯坦，
Node 1. Last summer, I joined my 2 uncles in Urumqi, Xinjiang, the most western province of China. My eldest uncle, Li Bei, and my second uncle, Xiaosong, were on holiday in the region, having already visited the theme park-like sand dunes of Aksu and the all-you-can-pick vineyards of Turpan. My eldest uncle, Li Bei, had been traveling restlessly since the official retirement age of 55, and will persist to do so until, quote, his body fails him. Him and his group of friends were on a tourist frenzy around the region, and as Beijingers, visiting the Uyghur Autonomous Region had become increasingly popular since a governmental push for the revival of the Silk Road heritage sites. The province covers an area bigger than France, Germany, and Spain put together, sharing borders with Mongolia, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, and India. One can link the New Silk Road or the Belt and Road Initiative as a continuation of the state-led Go West campaign, where since the year 2000, heavy industries and corporate manufacturing facilities have been encouraged to move inland and westward to, quote, thrust the great development from the vibrant East Coast into its poorer regions through a controlled and loosened economic climate. The catchphrase used amongst planners of the New Silk Road economic belt is "Yowai Zhine," meaning bringing the outside in. This project is designed to stave off slowing economies by recasting geographies of law and violence through the arrangement and rearrangement of the inside and outside of state space. Actions like military occupation, land grabs, and dispossessions are all part of its territorial reconfiguration. A state-led movement into the energy and resource-rich regions towed under a rhetoric of redistribution of wealth, whether by long-distance connections to the industrial zones of the East Coast or consumer demands exterior to the country, strategies of zones of exception and logistics have become intrinsic in its generative and segmented territorial remaking. Units of space and time are redesigned into a network of repeating geometries of governance. Expressways extend from 30 to 140,000 kilometers in 1999 to 2017. The high-speed rail network is aimed to stretch 30,000 kilometers by 2020. Then 8, now 12, and soon to be 22 horizontal and vertical railway lines stretching across and beyond China, $1,200 billion worth of Chinese construction firm contracts in over 60 countries. When speaking of the expansion of supply chains in Southeast Asia, anthropologist Anna Tsing meant it not only through the precision designs of computers, but also in business deals or plans of development, the bureaucratic and technological shifts, the conquest of nature, and, more generally, in world-making. To be expandable and scalable, form designs where the conceptualizing of the world and the making of the world wrap with and into one another. After a few back and forths, I made an agreement with my two uncles to take me with them on their route back to Beijing. I sent them a picture having only a few nodes circled and routes thickly traced on a very zoomed out Google Maps screen grab, where after not being able to successfully explain my desire to visit these, in their eyes, unexciting places, they suggested we more or less see where the road takes us, following the New Silk Road as method.
现在是当地时间下午5点，官方时间6点。到达乌鲁木齐机场后，他推着越来越多的货品，准备申报。他将货品分别放置在几个小推车上，每个推车每次只能承受4大捆货品。等待，空气中有种别样的气氛。检查站频繁打断人群川流不息的节奏。他后来和我解释，陆路快于海路。边说边指着丝绸之路博物馆里的地图，那里延伸出3条主要线路：北部、南部，还有中部的铁路通道，连接当下中国与欧洲、印度、巴基斯坦、俄罗斯。他们跟随着经济潮流一路向西，将益处从中国一直带到德国。他告诉我，今晚 准时会在10点关门，午夜。在这里，交界线开始变得模糊，可能连到了波兰、白俄罗斯。事物之间有多近，是由参量定义的，指令、争议、意见、收益、关系，或者道路的改变。我们停下，看着罗布泊的地貌。他指着散落在各处的巨大岩石说：“这里以前肯定有过水。”沙海，沙子组成的海，海洋一词的新前缀。沙漠中的沙子在风中徜徉，聚集变成沙丘，然后像缓慢流动的液体一般移动。大地吞噬着大地。我们沿着新丝绸之路进入到这座以乡里和最近刚刚发现的石油著称的城市中，几乎没有多少人住在这里，但是建筑依旧在建造中。当他被一个看门的拦住后说道：“他是河南来的吧？或者是山西？”他们互相点头表示同意。
哎，那个有个前些日子我看那个微信上有一个视频，就是他说是到欧洲的，那个货车，怎么那么长啊？那是真的吗？
真的。
那几乎我见好像有3个车头2个车头就能推着，
一下挂50来60。
对，时间特别长啊！你看他做了一个转弯的一个镜头。
我们的青年旅店经理刚好在附近的货运站工作，我们问他是否可以进货运站看一眼。刚开始的时候，他很自信地带我们参观，但是同时又告诉我们要小心，别太声张，尤其是别被他的老板知道。后来我们还是招惹来一群经理围堵，但是一听到我们在询问新丝绸之路，他们就热切地围绕着我的录音机说了起来。
我们这现在就是50公里、100公里，这才一个车站。它不像以前那个，现在是10公里一个小站，10公里小站，这都开放了。中途没有货运的呀，它啥都是50公里、100公里一个站。那小站上它又不装卸，直接就通过了。这个区间买断，懂了没有？就这个火车，这一下子就是买断，他妈500公里或者300公里才停一下，你懂了吗？这个货运，它客运双线，货运单线啊，就是整个是这样子，速度才就起来了。以前是4纵4横，就4个这样子。中国这个地版图是4纵4横这样子，现在是8纵8横，铁路网非常
加了1倍
啊，加了1倍。现在还要12纵啊，就往上国家的发展这样铁路啊，非常密集。所以说现在提速非常快啊。
那原来跟那个欧洲的联系的这种铁路的联系时间要长，而且很多都是海运。
对，
现在这种“一带一路”用这个
用铁路，
哎，
用直接就往欧洲、往英国、往德国这铁路，直接就从哈萨克过境哈萨克斯坦的，前头有这样的你合同一个就过去了。
哎呦，真棒！那个太速度太快了。
我们这车站还是不是很忙的。你要碰上那个大站，那个北疆奎屯、阿拉山口，那整个跟码头一样，跟
阿拉山口出境的往那个俄罗斯往欧洲走的那个特别多。
那个地方就没有空地方，全是货啊，那忙的啊，就跟港口一样啊，都集中到那儿。
你看这是集装箱拉过来的。
我们一用就这样的集装箱啊，这是那40吨的，60吨的大集装箱、小集装箱。
就跟现在那个海运那个上面。
一下就一列，就直接就走了，装完以后直接就走了。你到哪一个英国、德国、法国，直接就一个列就走了，直接上口岸上装船。
有机会你就看看这个江上的车过去了，货车你在那等着，你看那货车，你数一下那个有多少节。
欢迎致电淘宝消费者服务热线，退款、售后维权、卖家请按1，账户问题如注册、密码、登录等请按2，商品挑选、货款、物流查询请按3，中转确认、请按4，支付宝业务请按5，商家业务请按6，请按7。
See on the maps that you see all these hubs and then the straight lines in between them. That's also how the old Silk Road was depicted. But for the old Silk Road, it's not true. That's not how it worked. For the old Silk Road, most of the interaction and most of the trade was actually quite small scale and only moving locally. And then it was the next person that took it on to the next place and the next place. So it did connect all these places, and it did change the social structure, not always in a positive way, but it had an interconnecting effect between all these small places in between the big cities and the big locations, because people were traveling a lot slower. But now the new Silk Road over seems to be a lot more like what the old Silk Road looks like on maps, but what the old Silk Road was actually not. There's more of a Silk Road instead of a web of interconnected small trade routes. The things in between the hubs, in between the centers, are really in grave danger of just being marginalized and excluded. And we don't see that in the statistics, because in the statistics, having Bishkek as a hub will sort of cover Kyrgyzstan, or having Osh as a hub will cover southern Kyrgyzstan. But all the small places and villages in between, and even towns, they don't only not profit from it, they actually lose from it.
As we move from elsewhere to elsewhere, we drove along the seamless tarmac roads, permitting us to glide through what was otherwise an incredibly difficult political and ecological landscape, adhering to its toll fees in straight lines. I couldn't help but notice how vacant these roads were most of the time. We passed by slogans, some which disavow drunk driving, another that said, we should cherish ethnic unity and hold tightly together like pomegranate seeds. Or others like, if we want wealth to arrive at our doorstep, we must build roads first. When arriving to the special economic zone of Lanzhou area, 6 days after my arrival in Urumqi, people we met reminded us that this zone had only just begun in 2012, that they were still needing to wait for business to flourish. Pending, nothing seemed open just yet, with the airport in the logistics zone hosting infrequent incoming flights. we found train station security guards bent over their computer's display with a generic bubble screensaver overlaying its desktops, held in sleep mode. We drove eastwards, passing the never-lived-in ruins of ghost towns, congregating at various points along the Belt and Road. Marxist geographer David Harvey reports that China recently consumed 6,700 million tons of concrete between the years of 2011 and 13, the 2 years of 2011 and 13, compared to the 4,400 million tons the United States used over the period of 100 years, from 1900 onwards. He uses this as an example to support his theory of a spatial temporal fix, how by the pure act of constructing high-speed rail lines, highways, dams and water projects, new airports and container terminals would be used to pacify social instability and sustain their overall GDP, providing full employment for surpluses of capital and labor, using up the extra tons of steel and concrete, reinforcing the spatial designs of capital accumulation. Trace personas and ghost murmurings from risk assessments, weather monitoring, credit ratings, your next possible purchase, his favorite color, feed back into concrete, metal, security boundary forming protocols, building a synchronization of histories which sediment into the discursive infrastructures we find ourselves in. An endless doubling effect, it hides the idea that the construction of right here is built of elsewheres. But if we pause for a second and listen in light of sight to the warehouse over there, we may just be able to hear the movements of a workforce remaining largely hidden behind these container boxes and storage shelves. Long-distance connections nurtured, this time through a mode and means of navigation made otherwise. Node 2. I'd like to begin this next chapter with an encounter. I met AAA Cargo through a chat group on the social media platform WeChat shortly before embarking on this road trip. A friend had introduced me to a few e-commerce groups which had hosted virtual marketplaces offering products and services at wholesale prices. In these groups, active members like Jose sold VPN routers, or McSpade marketing a substantial inventory of Apple products, another business with expedited visas on offer. These are groups which seem to be mobilizing circuits of the unfaithful, the echo chambers of WeChat chat rooms. Though it was a repeated announcement of a door-to-door distribution service by means of different forms of transport, able to send ordinary, copied, battery liquids, food, sensitive materials from China and beyond, which had arrested my attention. AAA Cargo had accepted my friend requests, confirming their ability to navigate the New Silk Road logistically. I inquired into the cost for sending a parcel they had offered to post it not through UPS but DHL, charging me less than half its usual price. I heard through other friends who had worked in the Chinese import-export industry that these informal services were made possible through the finding and usage of extra spaces in legitimate containers of DHL or UPS, depending on who the paralogistician knew. It seemed that in this same apparatus, when looked at with more detail, also creates new opportunities for quasi-legal cargo mobilities, leveraged in an ambiguous pool of gray. Chaohuan, or the ultra-unreal, is defined by the surpassing of the unreal. A proposed new literary genre, Chaohuan describes the necessity of an author to write fiction, as the everyday reality already exceeds one's imagination due to unimaginable conditions. Paralogisticians consisting of Alibaba merchants forming the new generation of precarious workers, developmental refugees forced outside of their hometowns, bandits who refuse to pay taxes. They hack infrastructural spaces through transgenerational guanxi and long-distance friendships, renegotiating within airports, markets, warehouses, special economic zones. Here, the imagining of the unimaginable is an everyday method of making ends meet.
one level, you have the older networks, which is friendship networks, family networks, first migrant networks, knowledge of space playing a very important role. There's a kind of military coda to this because you have to know the space and you share this knowledge with others, right? And so that others can come and attach themselves to this space. So those are very important techniques of navigating anything. I remember, once I was in Moscow, I met these two traders from an obscure town in India. They were navigating every republic in the USSR very confidently. They didn't speak the language, but they knew this form of navigation. This is a confident form of navigation. These are people whose English is very good, whose Russian is indifferent, but this is what I mean. It's a different form of navigation than, say, the financial analyst who's coming, zipping around the world, because you do have, along with commodities and infrastructures, large movements of people that are moving, fleeing sometimes, moving for trade, moving for work. These networks, I think, are fairly substantial, the smaller networks. And they are happening in Africa, they're happening in Asia, they're happening in Latin America, and they cannot be wished away.
南太平洋的传奇约翰·弗鲁姆曾说：“认证、授权、计费。”这首圣歌引起世界共鸣，鼓动千斤重物，变戏法一般横空生出了澳大利亚面霜和抗老精华液。您的货物可以运送到菲律宾、桑吉巴尔、加纳、尼日利亚、喀麦隆、毛里求斯、莫桑比克、马拉维、东非、坦桑尼亚、肯尼亚、乌干达、布隆迪、刚果、卢旺达、南非、斯威士兰王国及周边国家。千万别客气。看那精心用塑料袋和透明胶做好的包装，依旧掩饰不了绿色包装纸背后浓浓的军事效率和气息。专为拯救生命而设计的加速度工具，如今则将生命阻隔到一个迷宫内，似乎是为应验一个古老的传言：鬼魅是无法转弯的。而就在这方方块块、规规矩矩的图表数据中，一股魅影正在萦绕。路线和岔道沿着躯体的轮廓延伸，标准的格式无法囊括我们，因为我们是多孔的，我们是柔软的。在这勘测好的疆土上，技法娴熟的领头人嗅到丰满又多汁的脉络和肌肉，随即运输货物，转眼信息到手。我们用血肉之躯，我们就是那元数据，我们感知。
Было дешево. В Туркменистан, например, мои знакомые не могли найти карго, который из Пекина отправлял напрямую в Туркменистан. Поэтому один из моих знакомых нашел способ, как отправлять через авиалиний. Он выезжал в аэропорт, когда был полет из Пекина в Ашхабад. Были рейсы. Он просил людей, чтобы они взяли там пару кило из его товара. Он им просто платил за килограмм и за перевес. Таким способом он очень быстро доставлял товар, и у него все больше и больше людей начали заказывать. Потом еще один парень к такой же системе подключился. И так постепенно они начали отправлять через авиалинии Туркменистана. Один из моих знакомых, тот, который первый открыл вот эти авиалинии, как отправлять через авиалинии, он нашел еще один способ. Он просил стюардесс, просто платил им тоже за килограмм за каждый, переплачивал и просил их просто как бы приглядывать за его посылкой и передавать ее заказчику по прилету. Помню, даже история была, когда мне вот тот же самый знакомый рассказывал, когда самолет просто не долетел до Ашхабада, сделал посадку, чтобы дозаправиться, потому что был переполнен.
Node 3. In Guazhou County, within a province next to Xinjiang, the manager of the Super 8 motel we stayed at was manning the front desk of the lobby. She told us when we interviewed her that, quote, "I don't know whether you've heard about this, but there were not that many cases of sandstorms back then in China. The cities nearby the sea were not affected by them at all, places like Beijing or Tianjin. The sandstorm, when it blew, traveled only 10 to 50 meters. But since the past 10 years or so, one could feel the sandstorms in as far as Beijing. That's why the government started to manage sandstorms from the areas of Tengri and Maosu deserts and the Taklamakan desert, which is in Xinjiang. Activities froze as sand threw place into a turbid haze. The highway we were on always ran in parallel with two other lines. One which was the still under construction high-speed rail, and another which was the Chongqing-Xinjiang Europe rail route. It was Hewlett-Packard who had initially made an agreement with the Chinese state to initiate the construction of this rail line in 2012. Their agreement was defined not according to business logic, but, quote, also with a certain strategic calculation. Faster than slow ocean, cheaper than air freight, this rail route from Chongqing cuts through the Xinjiang province into Kazakhstan, Russia, Belarus, and Poland before reaching its destination in Germany 11,180 kilometers later. The train route's border security checks are displaced through the Eurasian Customs Union Agreement with border security software tailor-made by Hewlett-Packard themselves. Installing a new framework of transnational regulation, security, and labor management across standardized units across various platforms, this new geography acquires a topological dimension with proximities defined by parameters rather than points on a Euclidean plane. Distributive and docking spaces become key nodal events where time and space are re-engineered for maximum value efficiency. From shaved transit times, supply chains and their inventory lists are reduced, leaving less room for uncertainty. In these lists, there is no room to log in details of the object's origins, nor for the hands that assembled them. These structures translate diverse forms of labor and natural resource management into a commensurable circulation for capital. Thrown into circulation, such railways have long acted complicit in making possible coerced labor and resource extraction across long and large distances. With the engineering of immediate time and space, the long-term delayed effects of industry and capital form what Rob Nixon would call a temporal disjuncture, an out of sync. Sandstorms increasingly protest against these scalable designs. Troubling the new Silk Road's imposed imaginary that such connections could only be made through these large-scale infrastructures. As the neoliberal political policies couple closely with corporate interests, what we frequently see instead are sharp lines being drawn between those who benefit and everyone else. But if we instead start to notice the things which might seem at first mundane or banal, fuzzy or slightly awkward, may over time become increasingly subversive as they regularly seep into dominant narratives of governmentality, creating new conditions, parameters, or collaborations. Taking cues from academic Deborah Cowan amongst many others, perhaps here is where we find points to build connective tissues of alternative futurities when imagining ways to occupy these structures, albeit differently.
金露露啊，快到没时间做梦，他感叹道，向苹果手机里蓝绿色的深渊投去一笔，手指灵动地按触在一旁回荡。亲爱的，您有新的货品到了。亲爱的，今日您将收到一份礼物：美白牙齿、脱毛、增发。新上市的电子产品，高质货品，保你好心情。加盟商业、KTV、舞蹈、教学、推广、生意、娱乐120个国际群，包月仅1490元。我们在一片虚无的疆土上慌忙穿行。脚下踩着的界面瞬息万变，地名无关紧要，历史纪念弥漫不清。新丝绸之路在别处铺就，留下的是一串串待完成的商寮，一块块合成的废墟和满眼像素般的沙石。
下午3点了，我们又上路了。人们有时候说，一整个镇子就这样没了，只是为了缩短3个小时的旅程。沙子从每个方向以每年10米的速度向这里移动，有时候会达到20米。沙子给时间设定了循环模式，它从不停止，只是会休息。向外望去，我在想，这些景观是多么容易就和风串通一气了。新的铁路线也随之延绵，轨道沿线是网格交叉状的护坡，沙尘防护设施放缓了大地的移动。它的目的不仅是消除沙漠的存在，而也是在这一刻 将沙子的未来定格。沙子提醒我们，沙漠是从现在的边缘滋生出来的。在这里，时间被压缩，沉淀成堆积物，材料将未来的图景一层层叠加起来。有些事物加速出现，而有一些则是被放缓了脚步。这些土地因为它的移动变化而不是很容易控制。火车或者卡车也无法准确预测什么时候它们的线路会因为与一场沙暴相遇而被迫停止。
Logistics does have these implications of a sort of increasingly hegemonic capture of labor across the earth into these logistical modes. But at the same time, I think logistics is ultimately a fantasy of control. It is entirely committed to a vision of seamlessness and frictionlessness that doesn't actually work out in real life. Friction is very much a part of the narrative of logistics as well, that precisely because it seeks this kind of infrastructural expansion that is heavily material, is constantly meeting all sorts of interruptions, both by conscious efforts of labor to interrupt and struggle against the supply chain, but also in terms of unintended consequences, like containers falling into the sea, or port infrastructure has to continuously expand alongside the expansion of massive cargo ships. And the results are, incredibly devastating environmentally. And so I think that there's an aspect of logistics that is often unrecognized, which is the kind of small-scale resistance to it, but also the way that it meets its own contradictions when it tries to do too much with itself.
"我想对你说，让我们像水一样，让我们在一起，渗透入这片笼罩在帝国主义历史下的新地界。让我们轻柔地触碰那组合，让我们肢解一个自以为世俗化，但其实各种膜拜置顶的体制。当它真的分解开来的时候，就会出现网络化名与虚拟替身的对话，而他们的背后，真名早已被人遗忘。炸裂的屏幕鼓出矿物排渣，杂乱漫生的货品清单上滚动着永无止境的净土、动土。好一个罗曼蒂克史！
那他先到莫斯科，然后再去白俄清关，那也是去明斯克清吗？也就相当于前半程他走的是海运，然后只不过跟国内专列相比，前半程走的是铁路，对吧？现在有的家，一个是因为就是那个什么，前段时间好像估计海参崴那边贵，不是下大暴雨冲毁了之后，他那个冲毁了，虽然说有的柜子吧没有干嘛，但是他就是会那个制箱，就是铁路一修好， 那就车皮有限，那就得是抢着上车皮，有的就上不去推倒，所以说就是可能也导致一大批晚到。咱们家倒是不多，没啥，因为这正好这段时间，包括无论是扣货也好，还是那个柜子什么的也好，咱家柜子正好量少嘛，也没摊上。
北京时间晚上10点，天空变灰，灰尘和沙子的味道在今早钻入我的房间。Thank you.
I think we have time for a very short conversation before we go on a break. I was wondering, can you tell us a bit more about the impact that this new Silk Road has on the people living next to it? Because here you mentioned the sand, of course, as being one, like the ecological kind of, the thing that happens because of this infrastructure project. So a bit more maybe about the impact of this project on the people living there.
So I guess I was mostly conducting my research within the province of Xinjiang. And I think I didn't really place this within the narrative of the film, but what was very present was the increasing lockdown of the population who were living in that province directly in connection to the construction of the new Silk Road. And I think there's no denial over, especially, for example, artificial intelligence and all of these kind of algorithmic governance is really being experimented on, especially within Xinjiang, on the local populations, especially the Uyghur populations. So I guess in that sense, there's a lot that these people are, I guess, completely, their lifestyle is completely influenced by this infrastructure. So.
Also, you mentioned, I think, was it at the Q&A in Rotterdam? You mentioned like that where the railroad stops, or like the stops are kind of moving. So that influences also on the, of course, if your stop is missed and your town is missed, then somehow.
So like the very key nodes of wherever the places are within the railway network very much determines what is left out, right, as well. So a lot of these villages just cannot survive anymore. Mm-hmm.
Can you maybe talk a little bit more about how did you collect the material? So when we're watching it, sometimes it's not really sure what has been snatched, for example, from the internet maybe, or from the WeChat, or what did you film? Did you have collaborators that also worked on the filming? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So this came out very much from my time at the Center for Research Architecture that was directed by Susan Schupley. And also through a very personal correspondence with one of the paralogisticians. And through them, I was really able to garner a lot of images and also sound materials. And I actually wasn't sure about, I've never even heard of the New Silk Road until I was talking to them and what kind of trade they were facilitating. And that very much led into how the script was developed, also like the direction for the parameters of the actual field study. And when I went on the road trip, I was very much on my own, and my 2 uncles were there with me. But so I did all the filming. But with the sound, I collaborated with Josh Fiola, and we were very much in direct like feedback, because I would send him like kind of prompts for the conceptual framework, like some of the themes, like sandstorms or seepages, also some field recordings from when I went there. And he would kind of translate them into thinking about it temporally. He would loop things, he would overlap things. And one of the main pieces of sound in there is from Kenny G. I don't know if you know him. But Kenny G, I guess a lot of his songs, especially Going Home, is used when shops are being closed within China. And so it's, again, this kind of consciousness over the temporal dynamics of the market. And I guess for me, the making of the film, even though I kind of outlined it, it was very much collaborative in general, especially in the ways that I would conduct research or conduct interviews or involve family members or things like that. Mm-hmm.
Maybe we have a time for a question from the audience. If there's anyone, question or comment? No? Oh, please. I can give you the mic here.
Would you be able to say a little bit more on what you're doing at the moment? If you're still looking at the New Silk Road.
Sure. So currently I'm based in Moscow at Strelka Institute as part of the New Normal program. And they're very much focusing on the New Silk Road, but then also the relations between Russia and China in the Chinese context. Looking at infrastructural issues as well as logistical, but very much from a design perspective. So yeah, I guess that's what I'm doing right now.
Can I also ask you about the concrete flux? I mean, the contribution is in the reader.
Yeah.
And you mentioned some really interesting strategies of aesthetic journalism, storytelling as activism.
Yeah.
Maybe just a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I think storytelling for me is extremely important, especially when such kind of narratives are so hegemonic in our imagination, especially these planetary narratives. And I find like cues such as the inclusion of things like the sandstorm or things like the paralogistician, so it's hard to say this, as just as important to be part of the narrative than everything else. And I think also through sand, you could definitely start seeing time being timed differently, as well as this kind of narrative perpetrating this modern perspective almost toppled on its head almost immediately. Or things like paralogisticians who are making ends meet despite not being in the plans of these large-scale infrastructure projects. So I think this provocation to tell new stories, or also trying to imagine new worlds, is incredibly potent and also incredibly strong in ways of shifting either how we gather together, how we talk about things, how we imagine things. And I think also storytelling is not, it's always a collective or collaborative act. And so the way that the film circulates, the way it's produced, as well as the discussions it evokes, for me is like activism.
Okay, thank you very much, Solveig.
Thank you.